Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Let's Be Real. I am Tara.
And I'm Sheri.
And we're going to kind of bring up something that Sheri and I just figured out. We don't know if we should be authorities in talking about. I mean, we're not authorities on anything, really. I don't know who decided to let us become adults, but here we are.
I've been wanting to change that, but no one will let me.
No one will let me. We're just going to be big kids forever with businesses.
That's true.
Which is fine. So today is kind of diving into an idea that's a little foreign to us and maybe to you guys listening too. Oh, God, I don't like this word either. Termination.
Oh, yeah.
It's the official term for when you end a relationship with your therapist or your therapist ends the relationship. The therapeutic relationship ends.
Right. Well, and there's a lot of different schools of thought on this, right? So in private practice, I think it's very different than agency work.
Correct.
Right? When I was in agency work, they would say, if you keep them too long, you're doing them a disservice. Well, We're doing them a disservice because they, like Medicaid would only cover 26 sessions, which may or may not be. I mean, it's when you say only, it doesn't sound like that's so little, but that's like 6 months.
Right.
But it's still, that's where you get a lot of work doing your termination. But even then, okay, so we just asked for an extension, right? But I have recently had some where a client has said, so I feel like I'm ready to graduate. I'm ready to fly.
Beautiful.
And I'm like, oh, that's amazing. Rather than not showing up again, right?
Exactly.
I'm just done, But and that, I got to do some really good closure work of, okay, come back in a month and then we'll follow up. And it was the same. You had said something about like the idea of come back in a month doesn't mean I just want to claw back some more money from you. It's saying, are you just to make sure that, okay, you're practicing all your skills in between that. And that when we get to that month follow up, okay, are you doing well? Are you saying, oh no?
Yeah.
Because the whole idea is for you to be okay without me, which honestly you're going to be, right? Yep. But the idea is that not everybody realizes that after the fact. And so and that same person has come back and said, okay, good. I feel like I am on the right track. I feel like it was really good that I got to talk this through, and I'm gonna make it so that I do have a follow up with you again. Yeah. So I think it wasn't a regular follow-up, but it was still, I could actually say on paper that we were working on closure, because we really were. Okay, so what happens? Like, so for you, what's your definition of what you're supposed to do during closure? Ooh. What were you taught?
Oh, I don't like those supposed tos. I wasn't taught much. This might have been like one lecture in grad school where we talked about what it's like to terminate or discharge or end the therapeutic relationship. It's really not given as much justice as it deserves.
Agreed.
Because you're told that at the beginning of therapy, you should already be prepping for the end.
Yes.
Which I think is actually very valid.
Yes.
It's the idea of you're here for a purpose. What does it look like to realize that purpose?
Yeah.
What does it look like to not have me in your week or your month? And the first time I ask that, it's going to be terrifying, potentially. If you really like me and you like the work we're doing and you like the pace we're going at.
It sounds scary. Like, what do you mean I can't do this for myself?
I don't want to let go of the rope. I don't want to let go of these things, right? But the idea is that the next time I ask you that, you're going to be a little bit more ready to answer it. And then eventually I'm going to ask you that question and you're going to be like, oh, I guess we've realized like the major goals that I had for therapy. And like, right, if I'm doing my job right or well enough, and you're doing your job well enough, then that's exactly where it's supposed to be going. But we just don't give enough attention to the fact that I'm a lifer. I like hiring therapists to potentially be with them for a very long time because my goals are ongoing and I like the act of processing.
Right. And I like the act of problem solving too, right?
Which is why I don't use insurance, because I don't want insurance to one day tell me like, okay, Tara, I think you've had enough, or tell my therapist.
Well, and I don't and let me knock on wood, but so far I haven't, like, we're not in the time where people say, oh, you only have this many sessions, right? Thank goodness, right?
Unless you're an EAP client.
Right, and I refuse to take EAP.
Really?
Yeah, because, it sounds like this great, like, guaranteed, I have this EAP service. They pay you half or less than the rate you could get for when they have insurance. It's the same insurance company providing it. EAP is useful when that's all you have.
I have a pretty good reimbursement rate for I'm only a member of one EAP program.
Okay.
I can't remember if it's, or I had the option to do Cigna, but I don't like Cigna's reimbursement, so I didn't do that.
No, they're terrible on both ends.
But I think it's either Optum or Aetna. I'm an EAP member or provider for them, and they give me a great reimbursement rate. Okay. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
No, but that's good to know. But then, also you have to ask for more sessions and justification, and that just brings me, which I understand there should be a justification. I get it. But then it just puts me right back into the idea of that Medicaid world that makes my brain hurt.
Sure.
And
I'm not as burned as you are.
I'm so burned. I'm so burned on that, and it's more like the agency really gets you all in in turmoil about it, and so that's my fear of EAP. But
sure,
if you're going to give me 5 or 6 sessions, if I have a very specific event that happened, or they do, then of course I feel like we can do that. I can do some EMDR in that 5 or 6 sessions.
Sure.
If it's a very specific event, absolutely. But if you're dealing with daily life stressors, which we all have, and your coping skills aren't good, and that's what we're trying to deal with, 5 or 6 sessions really not going to get us anywhere.
It's not, because we don't have enough practice in between sessions for you to really hone those skills in.
Exactly.
Which makes a lot of sense. Now, I almost have to be okay with EAP because a lot of players associations or professional athletics associations here rely on an EAP model.
Okay.
So to be a member there, to be a provider there, you kind of have to be okay with it in order to be a listed provider for them, which I can vibe with, because obviously that's my bread and butter, that's my population,
right?
But to be an EAP provider, you have to be pretty, and I've actually, outside of BetterHelp, I've never had an EAP client.
Okay.
So let me speak from a place of theory and not a place of practice.
Right.
But you have to be really good at recognizing the end of therapy when you start with a limited session client.
Right. Like I've said before, is I've had it wasn't an EAP, but it was where the a workman's comp contacted me right through, and I said, okay, this is what my plan of care, that I feel like if we're working specifically on this event that happened that they're getting workman's comp for, I'm saying we're going to do this in 7 sessions, and it can be revisited at the end of that, and this is my cost, right? Which is different than what EAP is, because EAP, my understanding is that you can ask for more, and sometimes you'll get it, sometimes you won't.
But you can't be upfront like what you were just describing. You were upfront with, I'm comfortable with 7 sessions and assessing if we need more at that point.
Right, exactly.
Whereas EAP is like, here you go, you're welcome.
Exactly. This is what you're going to get. And, I have had, the reason why, because I've been burned by some of the EAP and, supposedly good EAPs, right? And the thing is that they say, hey, okay, it's so easy. You just go on their website, get a number, you give it to your provider, and the provider puts it in. Sorry, billed wrong.
Yeah.
Sorry, billed wrong. Sorry, bill. Oh, we have to call 20 times, and finally it's, okay, yeah, sorry. That's the right code. Yes, we're gonna pay for that. So who has time? Meanwhile, I have to pay my provider, or I have to pay myself, or how am I going to get paid? Right.
Right.
So
those phone calls are not billable for us.
Of course, right. And the games you have to play, and then they don't have to pay a copay, the person coming in. So of course they want to use that before they use their insurance, because then they have to pay a copay.
Yeah.
But if you have insurance, just use your insurance. That's the whole, because then we don't have to play games, right?
Your insurance still gets the information if you have an insurance EAP, it's all the same information.
Right. Exactly. They just don't want to have to pay their copay, which I understand that, right? And again, you're offered, you have this service, right? But the employer is paying for 2 separate services, right? They're paying for your insurance, and then they're also paying for a separate EAP.
Yep.
When it's almost like it's almost a shame that they paid for that EAP, because they're getting the same, if not better, service. Then more people are going to take it than the EAP, right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
So,
I
don't know, but
I've never had to search for an EAP provider, so I don't know what that journey is like.
Yeah.
I'm on the other side of it, where I'm like, hey, this one insurance company, I took your EAP.
Yeah, no, that's good. You take it where you can get it, right? And that's the thing. So if we go back to the idea of we are trying to talk about termination or case closure, and what I was taught was that you have to be saying, okay, so if when we're done, how would you be able to receive services when we're done, right? I know, and I learned that from being in an agency, right? You no longer have Medicaid, or something happened and you no longer can have services. Where can you get services? Nowhere. So sorry, I say that a little tongue in cheek, because if you don't even have that, it's really hard, because if you're a Medicaid person, it's going to be really hard for you to find a provider that's going to continue. So now that we have the Affordable Health Care Act, it's different, right? We have more people with insurance, more people able to get services that wouldn't be able to before. But at the end, you still have to decide, okay, so if I can't help you, or if we're finished, if some emergency happens, who are you going to reach out to? Because or if we're done, I may not have availability to get you back in. Yeah. Right? So to me, it's more of like safety planning, working on what are you going to do after? What are the coping skills you're going to continue to use? What was your progress? How do you feel like you've done in therapy? Do you feel like you've gotten enough out of it? And I feel like once that's answered, then we could be done.
Absolutely. So. It's really nice to hear that you've had a client that has said, I think I'm ready. This is great. Yeah. That's so exciting. Right. I think typically what happens on my end is I usually do get a message. I usually don't get ghosted.
I don't usually either, but
I mean, that used to happen quite a bit more, but I think recently, I don't know, I couldn't speak to what it was. I like to assume it's maybe my relationship building skills that have improved, where
probably
we're equally invested, and I'd like to show myself as understanding. So even if you tell me you're not coming back, I good luck to you. I get the opportunity to at least connect.
Right. At least let me know what's going on, because I don't want to be calling or having my office manager calling, think something happened to you.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Because really, we have your safety. We're invested in that.
I do think about you guys.
Yeah. Like, whoa, what happened? I know he was supposed to have surgery at some point. Did he have the surgery? Did he not?
Right.
Is everything okay? Did anybody hurt themselves? Like, nobody wants that to be like the outcome, right? I want to know that, okay, we're parting, and the reason why is either, if you can't pay, okay, tell me, we'll work something out, right? If I've seen you for a while, I'm not going to say, oh, sorry about your luck, right? We're going to work something out. And it's just a matter of building that communication skill. And I think that's probably what's happened for me too over time, is that people, like, I've made it okay for people to know that, hey, why don't we start going to every other week? Yeah. Why don't we start going to every 3 weeks? Why don't we start going to once a month? So they know that it's okay to slow down services. Or if something big's happening, okay, you can call me and we can get you in, right?
Yeah.
So it's a flow, as opposed to, oh my gosh, I have to go and I don't know what I'm going to talk about, and I just don't. What if I cancel at the last minute and she's going to charge me? And so I think the more we explain those expectations, then I think people are better off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't like being a stickler about those types of fees. Those fees are never in place to prevent you from coming to me. Quite
Agreed.
The opposite.
Agreed. It's saying, hey, listen, you know what? Life happens. I understand. If you're sick every week, and you have a standing appointment, then you know what? Something's wrong. Maybe, you need to not have a standing appointment and call me when you're feeling well.
Yeah.
Because after a while, like I've literally saved that time for you. And so if somebody else can come, then that'd be great,
Right.
And I don't want to have a waiting list.
Right.
Right. That's how I have other people that work with me, so that I don't have a waiting list. But at the same time, if people call at the last minute and say, I'm not coming, then that's no fun.
It's not. It's not, because we're not an industry that takes deposits. We don't take insurance plans for the time that we set aside.
Right.
So those types of patterns, we're still in a business. We're still...
Right. I still have to pay the rent.
We still have to pay ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, to pay the bills, to live the lives that are worth living for us, because we're still people with our own stories and our own desires. So
absolutely. Right. Well, and how many times do we have discussions with our clients about that, right? And about being able to protect themselves and being able to work on boundaries. And if we can't do that ourselves, that's really hard, right? So if I have a client that's, let's say I have a VA client and community care has become a problem, right? So where they'll take them back to the VA and
Yep.
maybe wait 3 months to give them an appointment. Well, unfortunately, that's not how it's supposed to work, but that's what's been happening, right?
Right.
So if I know that their referral is going to end, and really we're doing really well. A lot of times it's really hard for people to just say, it's okay, right? You can come back. But they're afraid that they lost their referral, and so they're not going to be able to come back, right?
Yeah.
So that's hard to have that natural ending of saying, okay, your referral's up. If you need me, you can come back another time. That's kind of how it's supposed to be, right? Instead of staying with me for 4 years, right? Which I understand they're trying to avoid that. Nobody needs to be, I mean, I won't say nobody, but really the whole point is not to stay with me for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah.
But at least not on a weekly basis.
Sure.
Right? At some point, I need to say, hey. Okay, I understand you have PTSD. But the whole idea is we need to learn how to handle those things and work on building those skills. No matter what, there should be some kind of skill going on, right? So that's where it becomes a challenge if they know that, okay, I'm going to be good, I'm doing really well, and we're going to finish. But if in 6 months I have some issue and I can't just call you, that's where people get nervous. So that's where it's hard in something like the VA where referrals are harder to come by.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think as a client, if you're, especially in private practice, right, we're also talking about a big distinction between agency or community-based care or care that is set up with these very specific parameters. So you have your billers, you have your funders, you have your checks and balances. They're going to have high expectations for you to be turning over a caseload.
Right. And why is that? Because you just said a lot of people, right?
Because of money.
Okay, right. And because now you have a biller, you have this, you have that, you have this, right? And then somebody who's also overseeing it. So all those people are getting paid
managing
too.
entity. That's what I was trying to think of.
Entities. I love them and hate them all at the same time, right? You know, it's great when you have a good one, right? But if you're going to, like, that's when we get into trouble with having multi-levels of people providing a service that's not billable, right? And so that's hard because then that's taking away from everybody else's pay plus the rent and all that, right? So I think it's hard for people to understand, like, when they think of and me as well, right? When I was a provider and not the owner, it's like, wait a minute, you're getting how much?
Yeah.
And I'm getting how much? Like, that doesn't make sense, right?
Correct.
But when you're the owner and you see, like, how much rent is, how much you pay for your EHR, how much you pay, you know, all these things, and you're like, oh my God, how am I going to survive from 1 month to the next, right? It's a lot.
It is a lot.
So, but again, not trying to make that be the ultimate reason. That's not the reason why we're terminating or staying longer. The purpose is, like, okay, are we really getting to where we need to be? Are you feeling like, hey, can we go a month? Right?
Yeah.
Is a month going to be a problem? And I think that's when I know if we've gone a few months where we've just gone a month to month to month. I know we're good.
Yeah.
You're going to be okay. Just call me when you need me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I respect that. I think well, speaking to the managing entities too, it's the capitalism of what's turned into medical care, which by extension mental health and behavioral health care, and that obviously could be its own book if it's not already. I'm sure it is.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
But I can't read that book right now. I'll get too upset
No.
being a part of it. But it's the attempts to standardize care when you and I are very much humanities people. We are people who are very invested in individualized care.
Right.
And that's what makes our work quality, as opposed to
Exactly.
burning and churning through a caseload and painting everyone with the same brush and being like, here's your progressive muscle relaxation. Here's your deep breathing. Here's your worksheet.
Right. Go buy a book then, right? I think we've talked about that before, right? You can buy all the self-help books. You can buy the workbooks.
Yeah.
But if you don't have somebody to guide you through it,
To make it fit you.
right, because it's still staying here. I mean, granted, it is going on the paper. I understand, but nobody's processing it with you. Nobody's, like, giving you some other tools.
If self-help books worked, why are there so many new ones being published?
Because people want to make money.
But if there was the magical pill, if there was the magical book, we
Right.
wouldn't be publishing more.
Exactly.
And I'm a part of that. Like, I have workbooks that I'm publishing right now. I have all these things that I'm doing. I'm, again, a part of it. But it's me trying to individualize these things still.
Well, I think that it's fair because if you have something like that and you're doing it with a provider or a coach or somebody, the whole idea is that these things aren't always meant to be in a vacuum. Right? It's one thing if I say, you know what, there's this great book and I want you, as your therapist, I think you should read this. Mm-hmm. I've gotten myself in trouble before doing that. But
that's why you don't like recommending them on the show.
Right? I don't recommend anymore unless there was one that came on and But other than that, if I haven't read it, I won't share it anymore because I've read through 3 chapters and then been like, oh shit.
Yeah.
I said, oh, that was great. You should read it. And then they get to 4 and they're like, Sheri, I don't know why you gave me that book. It was great until here. I'm like, oh shoot. So anyway, but the idea, like you said, about being individualized, and that's the hard thing about insurance companies and the medical model. And at some point maybe we'll change all of this, but I don't know when that's going to happen now that we're so ingrained into the system, which I'm happy that we are, because then people wouldn't be able to get any kind of service. Right. But at the same time, if somebody just comes to me and they're having issues in their marriage, there's no diagnosis that says just issues with your marriage. Not a billable one anyway.
Not a billable one.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a Z code for everything. And those are the codes where we just explain what situational things are happening in their life, right? But
insurance doesn't give a shit
They don't give a shit about that. Right. But the average person, right, if you don't want them to have other medical problems, if you don't want them to have other physical ailments, if you don't want them to have other psychiatric issues come along, we got to deal with that stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Divorce alone should be a reason and should be, and that's what I just put adjustment disorder, right? Because it's a huge adjustment. It's like dealing with a death, right?
Yep.
So that just took us on a whole nother rampage. But I mean, that goes through the whole idea of why we sometimes have to close before we need to, right? Yep. Which in private practice,
you don't really have to.
I don't really have to. So thank goodness.
Yeah.
We make it work, right? If the VA is not going to work out, then we're going to find some other insurance way, or we're going to find some private pay, or we're going to do something, right? We're going to make it work that you're not going to leave you on the street.
Exactly.
So
exactly. Yeah. So when your therapist or when you're looking to end a relationship with your therapist for whatever any reason is valid.
Right.
Right. Whether it's money, whether it's time, whether it's you feel like you've been successful and you want to check out what the world is like without having a standing appointment. Any reason in or out of those is valid.
Right.
When your therapist says, awesome, let's do that check-in in a month. How do you feel about having another session? It's not a money grab. It is. No, we are taught that is best practice. And I believe that it is too.
I agree, because it's like, okay, see ya. Bye.
I know.
Right? Or I have had people tell me, you know what? I feel like I've done as much as I can. I'm going to take a break for a little while, and I'll say, okay, why don't you come back in a month and see how you're doing? Make sure that you're, nothing else comes up in between, and then they're like, oh my gosh, I should have never stopped.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
So
glad that you suggested that extra.
So that's the thing
appointment.
Is like, okay, life happens, but again, it's also testing. What is it that you weren't using, or what was it that I didn't teach you, or what is it that we, what happened here?
This might be a good topic for tomorrow, because what we have on our schedule for tomorrow, or I have on my schedule at your office tomorrow.
Oh, yes.
Going on vacation being like a litmus test of how your clients are doing.
Right?
As a therapist, going on 1 or 2 weeks away. No, not a working vacation, which I am a big fan of. And then coming back and hearing the differences of like, okay, I was able to do this, this, and this. Tara, you'd be so proud of me. Tara, you're never allowed to go on vacation again. All like the different directions.
That's how we know how well you're doing.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, I have people who will say, you know what, can I see you like the Friday before you go and the Monday when you get back? I'm like, listen, you're going to be okay, I promise, right? You're doing well. Are you sure? Yes, you are, I promise, right? And so then people will say, I didn't think I would do so well. And I'm like, remember, I don't live with you. Right? You're doing this
You
stuff.
lived before me.
Right. You're going to live after me.
You
right?
are.
The idea is that we're just helping you come up with ways to make that better.
Yeah,
right?
Well, this is a trade. I trade some like really cool interventions and skills for you, and you get to share your story with me. Like, what a great trade this is.
Exactly.
That's awesome. So how do you feel about wrapping around there?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay. So this is a pretty poetic episode.
Yes.
Because this is also our last episode.
Oh, womp,
Womp, womp. Unexpected, but for reasons, for things we couldn't exactly predict or foresee. As you know, we're in a studio. We don't produce this ourselves. And so that's a lot of resources, time, money, otherwise. And I think we've just kind of ran our course. I would have loved to have made it to 100 episodes.
I know, right?
But this isn't a goodbye.
No, we'll be back in a different way.
Yeah.
And you know, individually and together. And I think this is a good time to just take a break.
Yeah.
See where things go. I mean, we've talked about a lot of different topics, and I think some we've probably spoken on a few times.
Yeah.
So I think just need some time for the world to give us a little more to talk about, I guess. So
yeah, we'll let the world exist and give us new topics,
Yes.
and then we can come back for like you said, something new, repackaged, however we get to show up. And I mentioned I have some things that I get to dive a little bit more into. I'll reclaim this time that we've been putting into the podcast, and I'll be putting it in digital products. So
Nice.
I'm going to start at the end of the season. I'll start selling digital workbooks specifically for athlete mental health, which I'm really
awesome.
excited for. So be on the
Good.
lookout. I'll be blasting that everywhere.
Awesome. That's great.
And then more workshops that I'm doing too. I'm hosting a lunch and learn at Sheri's office tomorrow, which I'm really excited about.
I'm excited about that too, right? I'm all about having a goal to work towards something, right? And this was a great goal of ours, right? To be able to do this, and I feel like we've achieved our goal and really like put our voice out there. And I never thought that I would be comfortable to do this. So thank you, Tara, for encouraging me.
You
and
made it happen.
it was fun. So hey, you never know where we're gonna go, so keep an eye out for us and whatever.
Give us ideas. We're still, everything will still be open.
Yes.
I won't promise I'll check the Gmail, but the DMs will always be open. I'm not closing that anytime soon.
Awesome. That's good.
This will be a see y'all later, not next week, but it'll be a see you later.
Yes.
And you can find me, Finish Line Mindset. So if you want to look for me specifically, Finish Line Mindset on all of my socials. That's my .com. Anything, reach out, refer. It's always free game. I'll always make room for people. And Sheri, how can people find you?
InspireMentalHealthServices.org. So that's our website. And if you want to, Tara's on there too. So if you want to see what we're doing, we don't have a social page. I don't have any time for that. So if somebody would love to give us some ideas or, send us some more ideas of what we could do in the future, what else are you looking for? I would love to hear it. So.
Definitely.
All
right, y'all. We will see y'all at some point. Thank you for listening. As always, we love y'all, and we're still here. We're not going anywhere. Just maybe not on a weekly podcast basis.
There you go.
We're still doing the work. All right, y'all. See you later. Bye.